Hey guys, it's David from Automotive Press. Guess what? I'm super excited because I have this week the new 6th generation Toyota 4Runner, all new for this year, and it is the most exciting vehicle to drive because you know that I love everything to do with the 4Runner. In fact, I've owned 7 different types of the 4Runners over the generation, including Limited, TRD Pro, you name it, I've owned it when it comes to 4Runner. Of course, I haven't owned the new generation 4Runner yet, but that might change as well. And also, you guys know that I own a 2023 Lexus GX 460, which shares much of its platform with the previous gen, 5th gen 4Runner as well. So lots of experience owning 4Runner, but also I'm finding many interesting things about the new gen 4Runner that you might not be aware of. So in this video, I'm going to point out everything, all the things that I love about the new gen 4Runner, but also things that I'm not crazy about. And I'm going to tell you things that maybe you don't even know about. So let me point out 50 things, that's right, 50 things that you might not be aware of about the new gen Toyota 4Runner, so I can tell you all about it by doing a proper audit inside and out, and also driving impression as well. Let's go. Welcome back. So I'm going to tell you as much as I can about the 2025 Toyota 4Runner. This is a TRD off-road premium version we have, which is probably the most balanced and the best value for money. But I'm going to try to tell you as much as I can, things that I really like about the 4Runner, but also things that I'm not too crazy about. So I'm going to try to tell you 50 things that either you may or may not know about the new 4Runner. So first thing first, as you already know, I'm going to do my usual quality check. So the first thing you should be aware of, as you may or may not know, the 4Runner is still built in Japan, still built at legendary Tahara plant, which is probably the best factory in the world. That's where the previous generation 4Runner was built, and that's where the 4Runner is built as well. So first point is that this is still built in Japan, still built at Tahara plant. Second thing is the quality of the panels and fit and alignment, and I'm going to tell you that is almost identical to the 5th gen 4Runner, which I've owned for many years. So I know that by looking at my data from before, that the gaps has been about 3 millimeter here and about 3.2 to 3.5 millimeter along the side. So let's compare to this one here to see what the difference might be. There you go, lo and behold, exactly 3 millimeter gap here. In fact, 2.9 millimeters, so almost identical to the previous gen 4Runner. And here is 3.1 millimeter. A bit wider here at 3.6 millimeter, which is usually the case. Between these two doors, it's usually a little bit wider. And back end here is 3.2 millimeters. So I can tell you right now, the gaps are actually a little bit better than the 5th gen 4Runner, which might or might not surprise you, just because it's a new model and sometimes you might think that the gaps won't be as good since this is the first year, but it's actually better than the previous generation 4Runner. So that's really important to know. Let me take a look and see if the actual quality of the materials looks good. You'll see some kind of weird waves here. That's because the dealer did not do a proper job of putting the PPF in the front. So that's what you're seeing here. But I'm looking at the quality of the headlight, the plastic components. You'll see the word 4Runner in here. And you know what? The fit is perfect. I can't really criticize anything because the fit of the plastic components is perfect. Between the bumper, which is also plastic, and the front fender, also perfect. It's lined up completely exactly the way it should be. And what about the fender? Same thing, no gap along here. This is installed at the port, but also installed properly. The plastic here looks good as well. No hard edges. So from what I can gather, the plastic components that are part of this 4Runner is as good, and maybe again a little bit better than the 5th gen, because I can't even find a gap among all the parts. So second point is that the plastic components in terms of exterior looks perfect. The third point is the paint check. I'm going to do the paint quality check, but also the paint thickness gauge. Let me find out what's going on. So the third thing I'm going to point out is the paint thickness. Let's see if it's better or different than any other Toyota product. So let's start with the hood first. 102 microns. Again, you want the thickness to be between 100 to 150 microns. Front fender is 107. Front door is 125 and 98 microns. So I would say that the paint thickness is a little bit thinner than the previous gen 4Runner, but not by much, maybe like 5 to 10%. If I recall correctly, the paint thickness was kind of between 110 to 125 microns in the previous gen 4Runner, and here it's a little bit thinner, but not by much. So the paint thickness looks good. The fourth thing I want to talk about is the overall paint quality. So in terms of orange peel, in terms of the consistency of paint, also the gloss and so forth, you know, I would say that it's about the same as previous gen 4Runner. It's not any better, it's not any worse. I would say that the previous gen 4Runner wasn't the best in terms of paint job. The GX is a little bit better because it's also a Lexus, but it's actually very good. There's no kind of defective things I noticed. It's very consistent. You see a reasonable amount of orange peel, which is always the case with Toyota products. You see quite a bit here, maybe even. But the paint job will improve as they go through time. So next year the paint job will improve, because I see a little bit of a defect here right at the edge, which is always hard to get it right. So I would say the paint job is about the same as previous gen, maybe a little bit worse, only because I noticed a little bit more orange peel. The fifth thing I'm going to tell you is about tires. They changed it for this new generation. It's now the Falken Wild Peak AT3W tires, and therefore these are more off-road capable than the previous gen 4Runner, which often came with the Bridgestone tires. They were not all that great, and these are actually pretty capable because it's the same tires I purchased for my Land Cruiser as well as an aftermarket tires. Just keep in mind the OEM tires are a little bit different in design from the aftermarket, but still these are the same tires that are also in the Tacoma TRD off-road as well. So I'll tell you a little bit more about the ride quality of these later on, but right now all I can say is that these are more capable, better tires overall for off-roading, but they do ride a bit rougher than other tires that we come across in previous generation 4Runner. The sixth point is something you already know. This one is now a 2.4 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, good for 278 horsepower. And I know what you're thinking. You're really upset that they dropped the 6-cylinder engine, which was the 4-liter V6 engine. I feel the exact same way, in a sense that that 4-liter was a very proven, very simple, easy to maintain type of engine, but it was kind of lackluster in terms of performance. And again, I'll talk about that a little bit more when I'm taking this out for a drive. Well, what can I say? Well, just keep in mind that this 2.4 liter turbo is also built in Japan. Many of the components are built by Japanese suppliers, engineered by some of the best and most experienced Toyota engineers. So I don't think you need to worry. It's a proven engine. It's been around for a number of years now, and we haven't heard any issues with this 2.4 turbo. Of course, you can also get the 2.4 turbo with a hybrid in the higher trim models such as TRD Pro and also the Trail Hunter. And of course, those engines are a bit more complicated, so it's a little hard to say about the long-term reliability. But these has been reliable, and the performance is phenomenal in terms of low-end grunt, because you get maximum torque and power at much lower RPM than previous generation, and so it feels way peppier even without the hybrid compared to the previous gen 4Runner. So I actually like the engine a lot. I didn't think I would like it, but in terms of the feel on the road, you know what, you can't get better than this 2.4 turbo, because it's well matched and well suited to the character of this 4Runner, even though it's no longer a naturally aspirated V6 engine. The seventh point I wanted to show it to you is the fact that this engine bay looks really busy, and something I criticized Toyota a number of times, because honestly it looks like some kind of messy jungle here. But they did confirm that the reason why there's no cover is to optimize cooling efficiency, optimize maintenance, ease of use, and so forth. So, you know, it kind of makes sense from that perspective. I just think that it looks really messy. You can see all the wiring and cable and the wrapped around tapes. And that's something that I'm not super happy about. But all the 2.4 turbo engines in every Toyota looks like this, so there's not much we can do. The eighth point is an important one too, and you should already know about this, but the new generation, the 4Runner, has 8-speed automatic transmission versus 5-speed. So you do notice a big difference when you drive it, just in terms of smoothness, refinement, and the fact that the shifts happen more frequently. So there is a huge difference, because the old 5-speed automatic was reliable, but it wasn't the right type of transmission for today's modern car. It just was kind of unrefined, and also it just wasn't the right gearing ratio. But this one with the 8-speed, perfect, and also this 8-speed automatic transmission is built in Japan as well. The ninth thing you should be aware of is the fact that, just like before, you can either have part-time four-wheel drive or a full-time all-wheel drive. The only way to get the full-time all-wheel drive, also like before, is the limited or the new for 2025 Platinum model. Otherwise, all the other 4Runners, including the Trail Hunter and TRD Pros, have the manual setup where you have to manually engage into four-wheel drive, and those things haven't changed for 2025. Now let me walk you through the interior a little bit more. So the 10th thing you should know is the overall design in terms of interior, which is vastly improved for ergonomics. Also in terms of the design and basic features, I think it's all good. I really like the overall design. Like, you get a really nice grip here. And of course, many of the basic components and design are shared with Tacoma as well. And in most of the upper trims, you have a 14-inch infotainment system now, and also fully digital instrumentation cluster. So the interior design has improved a lot. It's definitely more techy and definitely more up to date than before. Having said that, I'm not happy with the choice of materials, which is my 11th point, because everything is hard plastic, which is really unfortunate. So hard plastic, hard plastic, hard plastic, obviously soft here, nice and grippy here, but hard plastic, hard plastic. I mean, come on, you know, it's got a nice texture, but it feels really cheap. It looks cheap. I was hoping that at least this portion here should have been like either a matching material from the seats or softer materials, but even this is hard plastic. So I'm not super happy with that, even though the basic layout is great with map pockets here and large cup holders. Come on, Toyota, give us a little bit more soft plastic on such a premium model, because the price is no longer cheap. The 12th thing I'm going to tell you is about the JBL audio system, which has improved sound compared to before, but not by much. Even though it's a JBL system, you could expect it to be really good. I would say it's not bad, but not great. And I will admit that even on a Land Cruiser, it's not bad and not great. So the stereo system is okay. It sounds pretty good, but I would say it's not one of the best sound systems around. The 13th thing that you should be aware of is the fact that everything has been moved to USB-C, which is great. However, if you want to use kind of wired system for Apple CarPlay versus the wireless, the only way to do that is through this slot right here. The two other slots that's in the center console are for charging only, and it doesn't have the capability to transmit data. Why did they do that? I suppose it's cost saving. But this is a poor location for this cable, because I prefer to do a wired Apple CarPlay just so that I can take the phone off, and then I have more privacy because everything disappears from the infotainment system for Apple CarPlay. And to maintain that system, you have to use this cable coming out of this side, and you can't even see this slot from the driver's side. So I think it's just a poor design. The 14th point I'm going to tell you is that even though I'm complaining about all this hard plastic, the quality is perfect. There's no squeaks, no rattles. Everything sounds solid. There's no squeak when I hold this door mechanism. Sometimes when you try to push and pull something, you can kind of hear something, but no, it's absolutely solid, as it should be, being built in Japan and built in Tahara plant. So yes, I'm not happy with the plasticky things, but in terms of the interior quality, it's near perfect. The 15th point is the locking mechanism, which is like before, can be operated from outside. So this one locks and unlocks by pressing the button, but just like before, I still think it's reversed. If I press the down button, which you think locks the car, it actually unlocks it. If I press the top one, it actually locks the 4Runner. So I don't know, that's opposite to your common sense, because if you push down, it should lock. If you push up, it should unlock. But this hasn't changed since the last generation 4Runner. The 16th thing is about this roll down window, which you already know Toyota kept it, which is perhaps one of the biggest news. But what you don't know is that this roll down window is faster than before. I'll show you. I have to push this button and hold it in. Yeah, that's quite a bit faster. I would say maybe 10% faster than the previous gen 5RUNNER. So it's faster to close and to open as well. But the 17th point is also about this rear window, and actually this roll down window is smaller, quite a bit smaller than before. I don't know the exact dimension, but it's about 20% give or take from my prediction. And that is just because the entire car has changed shape, and they have to increase the structural rigidity for safety and so forth. And you can tell the door is already pretty big and heavy, and so they can't make this so big. So unfortunately, this is smaller than before. The 18th point is that we finally have electric operated rear tailgate or rear hatch, so I can either push a button here or I can do also kick sensor as well. So that's a nice touch because it was all manual before, and the rear hatch or rear tailgate was really heavy and big, so this makes a huge difference. The 19th point is the fact that if you don't buy the hybrid model, you have a bigger opening here and a little bit lower height as well because there's no battery underneath, and it's really nice and big, wider. It's bigger than the previous generation 4Runner, unless you buy the hybrid and then you lose some of the cargo space, but otherwise it's very practical, very usable space. The 20th point is that you can still get the third seat option on the 4Runner if it's a non-hybrid model, but even if you buy the second seat option, you still end up with these cup holders in the back because they're trying to standardize the interior design. The 21st point is the fact that they changed the design of the second seat in terms of folding, so I can tumble this forward, but you do lose some distance this way because this one tumbles forward, much like in other Toyota cars now. So not everyone likes this design. It doesn't quite fall flat, and this one obviously restricts the length of things you can put in here, so it's a little bit hard to put, let's say, a camping bed in here. The 22nd point is, unfortunately, there's less legroom in the back than it used to be. We used to have a really huge space in the back, and also the previous gen 4Runner, you can slide this seat forward or backward by adjusting with a lever underneath. That's gone, and even though I think the headroom has improved a little bit, this legroom has reduced, and that has a lot to do with the design of the new body. Requires more structural rigidity, which means more reinforcement, and seats are also more comfortable, so they had to change some of the seat thickness, and all that resulted in the less legroom, which is unfortunate. The 23rd point is something you might not notice, and that is the actual frame underneath, which is part of the TNGA-F platform, has changed as well. It uses things like laser welding and uses different layers of metal to come up with a construction that is different from before. It's more efficient, provides better basic rigidity improvements, and therefore the vehicle handles better. The 24th point is the fact that depending on which trim you buy of the 4Runner, the suspension changes in terms of shocks and coils as well. But you know what? In this particular iteration with the Wild Peak tires, I find the ride to be pretty rough. I did double check to make sure that the tire pressure was correct from the press vehicle place we picked it up, and it is correct. But on the rough road, on the bumpy road, it actually gets pretty bumpy. No problem on the smooth road, but I do find the ride to be a bit rougher than the Land Cruiser, and so I was a little bit surprised with that. And because the Wild Peak tires are used also in TRD off-road and Trail Hunter, I'm going to suspect that the ride issue might be similar as well. But they do have the old MU and also the Fox suspension, so the ride could be better. I haven't driven the TRD Pro version yet, so I'm going to reserve my judgment until I do. But as far as TRD off-road is concerned, the ride is actually pretty rough. The 25th point is something you wouldn't know by looking at this vehicle, but they changed the manufacturing process and it's now more efficient. As much as 5 to 10% is what I predict than before. So in order to do that, they had to incorporate what we call DFA, which is designed for assembly methodology, where they simplify the components so they can be produced faster and more efficiently. And you can kind of tell by looking at the parts, the way things are put together. Unfortunately, it looks a little bit cheap now, but it does provide efficiency because it's easier to put the parts together. The 26th thing I want to point out is the fact that these seats are way better than before. It's much more contoured, much deeper side support, thigh support, and it's more comfortable. I think the old 4Runner wasn't all that great in terms of seat comfort, and if you drive for a long time, it gets a bit tiring, but these ones definitely improved and better feel than the previous gen 4Runner. The 27th thing is, unfortunately, we still don't have grab handles on the driver's side. We do have it on the passenger side, and it's not a problem just because this is not super high off the ground. But on the Trail Hunter and TRD Pro, you might have a more difficult time because we're missing the grab handle on this side, just like in Tacoma. The 28th thing I want to point out is the fact on some models you can get a stabilizer disconnect. This one doesn't have it, but you can get it on TRD Pro and also the Trail Hunter, which allows for better wheel articulation. The 29th thing is minor but kind of important, and that is the placement of the microphone for the hands-free Bluetooth calls. There's one here, and also one there. So the passenger's voice can be heard very clearly as well. So the quality of the call during the Bluetooth was actually excellent according to people that have been talking to me, and that is partly because the microphones are more placed strategically, and there's now 3 of them. The 38th thing is that I'm just thankful that they didn't eliminate buttons and switches. In fact, they are bigger than before, so the controls are nice and easy, they're nice and big. Volume, HVAC controls, also a defogger and stuff are all still buttons, and I'm really happy that they haven't removed them or made the buttons small. The same goes for the transmission shifter. Nice big grippy one. You can move along all the transmission like normal. It's not push button, it's not this one of those fidgety things. So 31st point, I'm glad that they kept the traditional shifter for the transmission selection. The 32nd point is the fact that you do get optional sunroof or moonroof, but there's no panoramic roof or panar roof option. That is not offered in any of the 4Runners, partly because you want to retain rigidity, but also people who goes off-roading don't want this to be huge all the way to the back, because you have to put stuff on the roof over there and you want to have maximum capacity on the roof racks. So I'm on the road now and I'm going to point out a few more things. So 33rd point is just the basic feel of the engine, which is a 2.4 turbo, no hybrid on this particular model. And you know what, in many ways it feels more natural and it feels more well suited to this car compared to the powertrain I have in the Land Cruiser, which is a 2.4 turbo with hybrid. And of course you can get that same engine in the 4Runner as well, but this one without the hybrid actually feels really good. So if I step on the gas like this, it's got plenty of power and torque. It picks up really strongly, especially compared to the old 4Runner. The previous gen 4Runner was really sluggish and slow. So there's no question that even though people really like the V6, and I do too, this engine performs better, accelerates better, feels much better on the road than the 5th gen 4Runner. The 34th point is the braking. The braking is also substantially better when I step on the brake like this. Smooth, really well modulated, and the vehicle doesn't dive forward or gets pushed back when you step on the gas. It's much better suspension, but coming back to the braking, it's a more solid feel. Brake performance is better than before. The 35th point is the basic ride. As I mentioned, in this smooth road, it's a perfect ride. It feels actually very similar to the previous gen 4Runner, but when you go over a bumpy road with these Falcon wall peak tires, it's actually pretty rough riding. I'm not quite happy with that. I don't know the TRD Pro, the Trail Hunter versions yet because I haven't driven them, but in the TRD off-road with Bilstein shocks, with the Falcon wall peak tires, perfect ride for smooth road, less than desirable on the bumpy rough road. So that was a little bit surprising to me because there's a lot of stuff that gets transmitted through the suspension, and it's not the most comfortable thing if you're driving over rough road. The 36th point is the quietness, which kind of surprised me because this is quieter than my Land Cruiser, which shouldn't be the case. The Land Cruiser is more expensive, but the Land Cruiser has a kind of very intrusive artificial or fake exhaust sound coming through the speakers, and it doesn't sound natural, and it's also kind of noisy. This one doesn't have it. As far as I can tell, I can't hear any kind of a piped in sound from the exhaust system, and therefore it's really quiet. You don't have acoustic glasses in the front, but it's actually quieter than the Land Cruiser, which really surprised me. The next point is the handling, and this is the biggest difference between the old and the new. You can tell I'm going through some twisty road conditions, and it stays flat, which is one of the weakest point of the previous gen 5th Runner. That thing is actually scary when you drive through some winding road because it just shakes so much and it just leans so much. It doesn't matter which model of the 4Runner you buy, the 5th gen really had a very poor cornering, but this one corners flat. I can't believe it's body on frame because it's stable, it's flat, it's extremely comfortable, and it just handles twisty turns and with much better balance than before. The 38th point is the fact that the transmissions, calibration, tuning, engineering is also better than the Land Cruiser. Because Land Cruiser's weakness is just the way it shifts up and down. Sometimes when you come to a stop like this, it downshift unnaturally, and it just doesn't feel quite right. I think it's something they need to work on it from engineer's perspective, but this one, no such issue. It shifts very quietly, very refined way, both shifting up and shifting down. And so the transmission is absolutely beautifully designed, engineered, much better than what I have in the Land Cruiser. The 39th point is the driving position. I think the issue with the previous Gen 4Runner was that you could never quite feel comfortable because the seats were not very comfortable, but also just the way that the seats were positioned, the way ergonomics was designed, it was kind of outdated design, so it was a little bit off balance, whereas on this one, I can get it to a perfect position. The seating, the distance between the steering and my body, in terms of how I can reach for the switches and buttons. So the overall ergonomics and just the balance of how I sit and how I'm positioning the car, near perfect. Not the case with the previous Gen 4Runner. It's a definite improvement from before. The 40th point is that the actual visibility, I think, is still very good because you sit up nice and tall, but it does feel a little bit more claustrophobic than in the previous Gen 4Runner because the previous Gen 4Runner had bigger windows all the way around, and I feel like it was a little bit more airy. This one has a slightly smaller windows, and we're sitting a little bit lower, and the actual dash sits a little bit higher, so it feels just a tiny bit more claustrophobic, not by much, but it's not quite as airy feeling as the previous Gen 4Runner. The 41st point is something that's hard to predict, but it's about the reliability. Do I think it's going to be as reliable as a previous Gen 4Runner? Well, you have to keep in mind that regardless of the model you buy, regardless of which trim you buy, the longer the car has been in production, the more reliable it is. So obviously the previous Gen 4Runner has been around for a long time, so they keep improving it, and therefore that version of 4Runner is perhaps the most reliable version ever. And this one being the first year, it's obviously not going to be as reliable, but I suspect by the time that it hits third or fourth year, a lot of bugs will be taken out and being built in Tahara, being managed by really experienced Japanese engineers such as Keita. I suspect that reliability will be almost as good as the previous Gen 4Runner. And if this particular model stays for the next 10 to 12 years, then by that time, I'm very sure that it will be as reliable as a previous Gen 4Runner. So it's something that we won't know for a while until some of the data come through. But I wouldn't worry too much about the reliability, although I would probably avoid buying the first year or maybe even the second year. The 42nd point is about these JBL speaker system, which you can pop out and remove it. But I really do think this is a gimmick because you can easily lose this or damage the pin underneath. And even though the sound from here is not bad, I really think Toyota didn't need to do this. It's just added cost, extra complexity, and most people will never use it. So I think this is a really novel idea, innovative idea, but was not necessary. The 43rd point is the new digital instrumentation is definitely better than analog version because you can customize it to show all kinds of different information, and it is easier to see and easier to decipher than the old analog system, which had very little information. So definitely this is improved over the previous one, even though not everyone likes the digital instrumentation and cluster system. I like this one better. The 44th point is the fact that some of the interior components are better designed, such as the glove compartment is much bigger, also deeper, wider, more usable space, and even the door is balanced so that it doesn't like fling open. Yeah, even something like this is better design. The 45th point is that the center console is also pretty good. It's not necessarily that much bigger, but it is deeper, and I can put a fair amount of stuff in here. It's also just rectangular. I wish it was a little bit longer this way, but it is a little bit more usable space than before. The 46th point is something we won't know for a while, but it's about resale value. Would it be as good as the previous generation 4Runner? Because right now the 5th Gen 4Runner is selling for really high prices because a lot of people want naturally aspirated V6. It's hard to say, but I'm going to assume that in a couple of years when people have finally given up the idea of having a naturally aspirated V6 and they want to buy the new generation 4Runner, it's going to maintain a good resale value because 4Runner has always maintained a great resale value. So we won't know yet, but I do suspect the resale value will remain high, maybe even higher than the 5th gen once people get comfortable with the whole idea of having a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. The 47th point is whether you should buy this or the Land Cruiser, because the pricing is actually overlapping quite a bit. The Land Cruiser is still more expensive, but not by much. Although if you're looking at the basic SR5, the 4Runner is much cheaper than Land Cruiser. Well, I can't tell you which one to buy because the two are similar but not quite the same. But I will say, based on the basic driving feel, I do prefer the driving character of the 4Runner, which feels a bit sportier, a bit more truck-like, a bit more to my taste. And the Land Cruiser has kind of this kind of raspy noise from the engine. The transmission doesn't shift all that well, and overall it just feels a little bit more awkward than this 4Runner. So in terms of the overall balanced feel, I like the new 4Runner better than the Land Cruiser. And as you know, I own the Land Cruiser, so I should know. The 48th point is something I talked about before, and in case you didn't know, this 4Runner is a combination of Tacoma and Land Cruiser. According to the chief engineer, from B pillar forward, it's very similar to the Tacoma in terms of engineering, in terms of capability, and then B pillar backward, from here backward, is closer to Land Cruiser. So what I can say is that the new 4Runner is kind of like a combination of Tacoma and the Land Cruiser at the back. So it's kind of interesting engineering. I think they did a great job of engineering this vehicle. It feels way better than I expected, and I really do enjoy driving it. The 49th point is a reminder that this is still a body-on-frame SUV, not unitized body like the Grand Highlander. And a lot of people get confused and mixed up, and they might drive the 4Runner and say, how come it's so bumpy and it feels like truck-like? Well, because it is truck-based design. So do keep in mind that if you're looking for a larger SUV, there is a distinct difference in feel between body-on-frame trucks and SUVs like the 4Runner, like the Land Cruiser, like the Sequoia, compared to unitized body or car-based SUV like the Highlander, like the Grand Highlander. And of course, if you go to Lexus side, you get the TX as well. So keep in mind that if you do like the truck feel and you want the capability of body-on-frame trucks, then of course the 4Runner is the best one to buy. If you want the most refined, the smoothest, the quietest, and most comfortable one to buy, well, don't buy body-on-frame. Go with unitized body like the Grand Highlander. The 50th and the final point I wanted to bring up is something to do with me, and that is, would I actually buy a 4Runner? And do I really miss the old 5th gen 4Runner? Well, I'm going to tell you that I do miss the 5th gen 4Runner. It was simple to operate, simple to maintain, very affordable, good value, great resale value. And actually, if I can find a late model 4Runner with a low mileage, I would still buy that over the new one, just because I like old-fashioned, simple design, naturally aspirated V6. But if I do want performance and I want better handling, basically a better overall SUV, then the new gen 4Runner cannot be beaten, because it is much better than the older one. So at the end of the day, you're gonna kind of balance out the two and figure out what's best for you, based on your criteria, based on your desire, based on your needs and wants, and only you can decide what's best. But I do love the new 4Runner. Well, actually, regardless of which generation, I just love the 4Runner, period. And yes, I will buy one over the next couple of years. I haven't decided when or which model to trade in, but my plan is to definitely own the 4Runner once again. I hope you enjoyed my video. I hope it's helpful. I'm sorry it's very long, but I want to tell you everything about the 4Runner because I believe in this product. I love this product. And as you know, I've owned so many versions of this. If you have questions or comments, that'll be great if you can put it below. If you haven't done so yet, would you give me a thumbs up? And also subscribe if you haven't done so. Until next video, I'm signing off for now. Thank you so much.